We have a lot of folks who are shopping for grow lights, right? Here in 2025, what should growers look for when purchasing a grow light?
Well, that's the question is right off the bat is what it's kind of like it's the map, where are you trying to go is where you're going to try to get, So like let's say you're in a tent and you're inside your bedroom. I mean, right off the bat, we've kind of nixed HPS out of the picture. We're not going to be able to grow with high intensity lighting in a small tent atmosphere. It's you have to air cool. That's one of the things that's really got me educated on this, like even 10 years ago, is growing in a pre-LED environment where you're stacking lights together in a small room. They all had to be vented hoods. So we'd run air through the hoods so we'd remove all that heat. And the byproduct of that is you were cooling the bulb. And so color temperature, like you'd have like a more orange number for the HPS. And that's an actual temperature. Color is temperature. And so when you're lowering the temperature of the bulb to its actual spec operating thing, you're losing a lot of spectrum. And so I started learning, like, why is it my friends that like have like Gavitas strapped to their ceiling in their giant basement are getting the same genetic. We'd all share genetics back then. It was tougher. There wasn't all a lot of the genetic banks were over in Europe and stuff, and you'd be ordering off the back of magazines like it was Sea Monkeys or something. It wasn't a lot of trust as far as like the system. So it was really relying on the community. So we all shared genetics. We find things that we liked. We got the forum cut of the cookies like back in the day when it first came out. And I'm noticing these guys are getting way better results than I am. And the only thing that was different is I was venting them. And then turns out, as I started educating myself, sure enough, I was losing a lot of spectrum. You're losing a lot of power that's supposed to be hitting those things. So if you're choosing, I would say there's a lot of controversy right now about HPS versus LED. And one of the things that's very, very interesting is genetic expression, phenotypic expression. I work with the jug guys, the jug dealers over at New Millennium Nutrients. And Jaron always likes to say phenotype is genotype times environment. So you and I have the same cut. We got the same genetic profile, but then you put it outside and I put it in a tent and they're going to express differently. And so I always wondered, where did all the things that I loved in the 2000s, where did they go? I still get the name. Here's the strain you want. And they give it to me and it's got the name and it looks kind of like it, but it didn't taste the same, didn't smell the same, didn't quite look the same. What happened? Was it genetic drift? Was it all the clones were being abused or people lying? Is it not the thing that I did? And then as I started meeting more people, more trustworthy guys that are OGs in the game, I started getting the real stuff. I'd get the real cuts from the real people. They still didn't express. Why is that? And so I started digging in another hole in knowledge and I realized, it's because they're not grown under vented hoods with GH nutrients packed together in a tiny room, VPD out of control, like even bad growing conditions. If there's a phenotypic expression that you enjoy, the only way you're going to get it is through an quote unquote an inferior growing process, because what plants were selected under is what they will thrive under, especially if you're not running things like if you get a genetic and you just take clone from clone to clone, it will acclimate to your environment, but it will never, its code is locked. But when you take something and you breed it, like if you back cross something and you self it against itself and the genetic remains the same, it shuffles the deck. And I always remember that family that I grew up with. I was friends with the youngest brother. Well, the oldest brother, he was like a genetic copy of the mom. The middle brother was like a genetic copy of the dad. And the youngest brother was like a direct split. And I started understanding like, okay, there it is. And when I was dealing with plants, I started getting, recessive genes. I see what's happening. It's like some of the grandparents come in, some of the mom comes in, different eye color, different skin tone, different hair color. It's like, okay, I get it. And then you take the twin brothers and you raise them in different places and they're going to act completely different. Twins raised in the same room finished each other's sentences, yet twins raised across the country can have surprisingly different lives. It all started coming together. And this comes back to lighting, where one of the biggest things that you can do to change your environment is the lighting. So if you chose an HPS versus LED, one of the things that really makes LED superior to HPS is that you don't need the cooling. For a watt is a watt. So if I have 1,000 watt LED and I have 1,000 watt HPS, technically speaking, more light, it's the same exact heat, but the LEDs produce more light for that heat. So your output is there. So it's not that LEDs are cooler or, there's more efficient. So a watt's a watt of heat equals X amount of BTUs, and you're going to get what you get. Turns out that when you measure things like leaf surface temperature, right? When you go in there with a little thermometer gun and you point at the leaf, you need to run your room slightly hotter with LED because there isn't that infrared. There's almost no infrared. That when you see those red diodes in an LED, that's them trying to stick some red in there because they don't come with it. Whereas HPS, high pressure sodium just kicks out the IR. That's why you could feel it, the heat coming off it. That's why if you go to a restaurant, you'll see the IR heaters. You'll have something that isn't glowing. It's not red. It's not hot. To like visually hot. There's no color coming off it. Yet you're getting blasted with this heat that's coming off of it, and that's just a pure IR lamp that's hitting it. You think that that wouldn't have I'll raise the temperature a little bit, but what is kind of interesting is that the leaf surface temperature, it actually affects like the biotic structure of what's going on, like heat stresses and things. Even though there's micro boundary layers that your plant creates, that's why we like a lot of airflow and get them going, and it breaks those micro boundary layers across because it's just got this micro layer of insulation, we'll call it. And so you want to knock that all off. And so just raising the temperature of your room doesn't necessarily get the plant leaf surface temperature all that much higher. Whereas if you bombard it with that IR, it gets it way higher. I was like, oh, so even the things that we kind of consider not valuable in growing, it is affecting the metabolism of the plant. This is why I'm not getting that diesel expression. I want that 2003 diesel, like Lifestyle Rob and I, when we were hanging out in Vegas. So, we're just the right amount of boomer millennial that we remember that 2003 diesel, baby. Where'd it go? It still exists. You just have to grow it wrong, according to 2025 standards.
Got it. Yeah, I feel like these days, particularly in the homegrown market, that I feel like a majority of people are going with LED versus the HID. The HID, whether it be HPS or MH or even CMH falls into the HID category, high intensity discharge. But yeah, as far as what to look for when purchasing a grow light, I think first thing right off the bat is coverage area. What area are you trying to cover? If you're looking for a 2 foot by 4 foot coverage area, well, you can filter it down by there, and then you can kind of get into the granular details of what's the power output? What does the light spectrum look like? And then you could even look at like the diodes, drivers. People get really, really deep into what's the BTU, the heat output. So there's a lot of different things that people can look at. Go to the full episode by clicking the outro card here, or click the link in the description section below. Catch you in the next video.